allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so my hope today is to get through the Senate bills. We're not going to exec any of the House bills today. However, we are going to, I think, going to try and have a discussion, especially on 517, the Hoyt-Marsh bill. So with that, do I hear a motion to go into exec? Senator Ward moves exec, Senator Sherman seconds. Why don't we do 417,
Which is,
the electric school bus
I've
pilot
got some new
program.
information for you all.
Okay.
So, what I gave to each of you a breakout of the funding that's coming through the infrastructure bill, and it's really for two purposes. One, let your municipalities know, because there's a lot of funding there that municipalities can apply for with the grants. But also, I just wanted to note as well that we are going to get $2.5 million right away for electric school buses, on top of the 1.2 we have from the Volkswagen. There's considerable funding for electric school bus charging infrastructure. And we got some of that already, the $17 million that's going into the DOT, and then there's other funding that's coming for that. I'll note also that there are, I don't remember, I think it's like $5 billion up to that is going to be available for electric buses, and a grant program. And so it gets hard to see how we would be able to get any of those funds in a grant application if we've proven unable to spend the ones that we already have. The other thing I want to say about the bill too is I mean, we had good discussions on it, but I think that, you know, maybe we got a little far afield from it. In a sense, first place, this is enabling. It doesn't say that the DES has to do this. It says it may. And then it says, if we're going to do it, this is a good way to do it. I mean, if we're, you know, we're going to do it anyways, I'm trying to say, is that that money is here, we will spend it. There are thousands and thousands of these buses in operation and being bought across the country. They're here. They, you know, I think of like today when diesel's $4.79, I mean, my gosh, how much money the school districts would be saving. But also the health benefits that we get, the nitrogen dioxide out of the air and the soot out of the air the kids are breathing. So just to get back to the bill then, I mean, we have the money, we're going to spend it. This bill lets us spend it in a smart way. That's the only thing the bill is about. It says that it lets us do the vehicle to grid. It says we have to have these MOUs, which address, you know, any concerns we might have about how they're done or how the schools operate them and so on. It also enables the utilities or others that are investing in using the vehicle to grid technology to provide funding to the schools that they otherwise wouldn't get. Now, I know there were concerns about the environmental side of it, and I thought that what we could do is in the part of the bill that addresses that the bills have to, trying to find it now.
Are you on the bill or the amendment?
Yeah, the amendment where it says comply with the, maybe that's in the original, where it has to comply with the federal transportation. Oh, yeah. This is on page 2, lines 22, 33.
What line?
23?
Oh,
Page 2,
sorry.
line 23,
Okay,
on the
yeah.
amendment. We could add there,
Can you tell me which amendment are we looking at? Is it 136S?
0215, isn't it?
0215. Yeah. That's the state of the art, I believe. isn't it? That's the most recent one we had, Daley? I believe so.
That's the one I have, but.
Oh, let's see. Yeah, January 21st, that's the, yeah. So on page 2, line 33, we could add there a phrase that will say, and provide adequate interior heat for winter operation.
That would address your concern.
In that one, it is page 2, line 33.
Oh, 33.
Yeah, say, so relative to student, safety, relative to student transportation, we could add and provide adequate interior heat for winter operation. The other thing that we could do, because of the concern about, and I'm trying to think whether it's in both of them or not, but the line, this doesn't have the pilot has to do 5 buses, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So line, I'm sorry, I'm going back between 2 and 3, 2 of them. But on line 21, that same page, the concern that Senator Birdsell had about, well, we got 1.2, but now we got 2.5 more, saying 5 buses, we could just strike that line completely. You see, and then it'll be, look, we're going to have the program, you got the money, you can spend, get as many buses as you can for the money you got. So I think, Senator Birdsell, you were right, that we strike that line, and, who am I to say 5? I don't know. I think I was talking to some of the bus companies about, it might be good to know how many minimum would be, and I think, no, we don't need to do that, because we'll have the money, and we'll spend it wisely. Anyways, I mean, I know there's a lot of thoughts about it. I just thought that, to me, it's like, they're here, we got the money, we're going to spend the money. Why not spend it in a way that really helps our schools out and gets us more funding? So that's where I am, Madam Chair.
And I appreciate that, Senator. The concerns that I have, granted, a big one was the 5 buses, because when I spoke with Navistar, who's a school bus manufacturer, when I got the information from Navistar, the cost of the electric buses would be $345,000. The cost of diesel buses is $90,000. So the difference would be $255,000. If we were talking 5 buses, right now there's only $1,250,000 in the account put aside for a bus program. You're already overextended at this point. Now you're talking the infrastructure. So I appreciate you addressing that. The other concerns I have, and that I'm not against, trust me, I am not against a pilot program on this. I wanted a study committee, because I think there are some questions that I'd like answered before we go ahead. So what is the limit on New Hampshire roads? So my understanding is the 2.15 kilowatt bus has a weight accessible to the New Hampshire roads, but you have to reduce the number of students in the bus by 7. But the capacity is reduced by 7 students to meet the standard school children's weight, depending on the school age of the children. But if you go to the higher bus, which is 3.15, these are questions I don't know. I think, from what I've heard, that weight is too heavy for our roads. That would offset some of the additional weight we have. The other questions I have is who's going to determine the guardrails of the program? What infrastructure is actually needed, and what is the cost going to be? Who's going to build and is responsible for the infrastructure? Is it going to be PUC? Is it going to be the electric, the utilities, or is it going to be the schools? What's the impact going to be on any ratepayers? And what are we going to do about the technology changes? Because from what I've heard from the bus companies, a lot of the companies are going away from the electric and then they're looking at hydrogen because that's what's left over from hydrogen is water. They're looking at that 5 years down the road. So I think a study committee would be, we would be better able to figure out what's actually coming down the pike 5 to 10 years and start looking at that. Those were my concerns.
Well, thank you, and I can answer some of them. The price differential, yes, I mean, that's why the 1.2 and then the 2.5 will buy us some buses. But the program is set up that that price differential might be actually paid for by the investors who, this is the way it works in other parts of the country, that they pay that differential as basically to buy in to get to use the vehicles as storage devices. And so that's what that negotiation is allowed here as another way of not only saving the schools, but also extending the amount of money that we have.
But I thought what you said in your testimony was that the school bus company or the school will purchase the price of, that they would usually purchase for a diesel bus, and then the state would come in and pay the remainder.
Well, this grant, I think, will cover all of it for the grants that are there. But I think that then the utility or whatever would be able to say that it will in fact pay for that other amount. And so we'd have more money to spread. In terms of who operates and the infrastructure, I mean, it's kind of defined in here that the DES is supervising this. I mean, which makes sense because they're doing the other electric vehicle stuff. They know how to do this. They're doing it with the electric vehicle infrastructure that we're rolling out on our highways. In terms of, and then it also was written in terms of, you know, the going down the road, the maintenance and all those things are in the MOU. They're the responsibility for the, you know, for the utility. They're going to be training the folks how to do the charging, how to do this and that. And as I said, I mean, all across the country, these programs are being run. And I say we could study. I don't really think we need to. I think the DES and the industry and the utilities know what they're doing. And the fact of the matter is, even if we study, it's going to happen anyways. So why not do it in a way that has the legislative intent that we have the vehicle to grid and we have the possibility of investment from utilities to use the money. So.
I have a comment and a question. So the comment is that, in a way, this is a study. I mean, in a way, this is a study. This is a pilot program. This isn't like we're changing the entire fleet and then 5 years from now, we're going to have to change it all again to hydrogen. But if we have the capacity right now and the funding to go ahead and do a pilot program so we can actually see how does this work, answer Senator Ricciardi's question about heat in the winter, answer the give back, it's not the right word, but where we're actually giving back the power out during peak time when the buses aren't in use. So I think it's a great use of this funding. I am concerned about what's happening with study committees when they clear the Senate, and we'll just have to see. But this would be, in my book, this is like a real experiment. This is a real study committee where we're actually studying, does this work in New Hampshire? The question though is, what happens to this funding? You say it's going to be spent. What happens to it if we don't use it for this purpose?
Well, it could only be used for this, if I may answer, Madam Chair. Let me just say as an aside about hydrogen. I was going to talk about hydrogen, and I think that some heavy-duty vehicles, especially interstate transit, interstate buses, are probably likely to be hydrogen. For the local buses, I don't think so. And the other thing, when we had the EV Infrastructure Commission, we studied hydrogen a lot. And one of the problems there is that the hydrogen refueling station, you're looking at like a $3 million, $4 million expenditure per station. So if you do that, if you go hydrogen, you're gonna have them, right where the heaviest trucks are, and you're gonna have them in one place. You're not gonna be rolling out hydrogen fueling stations all over the state. 'Cause
You also don't have the ability to tap back into that hydrogen for other use like you would with electric.
Well, I mean, hydrogen might be used as energy storage out of offshore wind, but we're off another subject. In terms of, what was your main?
My main question is, what happens to the funding if,
Oh,
you've
okay.
got two
No,
different
the
sources? You've
federal
got,
funding is designated. I mean, you'll see what I passed out, plus I did confirm we as a state are getting $2.5 million for electric school buses. We can get more in grant programs, but we've got the 1.2, we've got the 2.5. Okay, so now, and if we don't use it, it just sits there, although I think the DES and DOT, it's coming in, they'll find a way to spend it. They'll put it on RFP. They'll find a way to do it. They were kind of waiting on us because they think this is a good idea to do it this way. And they're working on getting the fast charge system out in the vehicles, so this is what they're gonna turn to next. But if we don't spend if it looks like we don't find a way to spend our money in the state, good luck getting those grants for more buses. And I mean, this is the way school buses are going. There's an electrified school bus program out, which is, developing plans to electrify all 475 school buses in the United States by 2030. So it's all coming at us. Do we want to do it in a way that kind of works for, that has some advantages? So I'm not trying to dismiss your question,
No.
Senator, and
get
I
that.
think that the folks who can run the program know how to do those things that you raised up and the road weight. That's something I'm not really sure about, but. I
Do
mean,
we have anybody from
we have,
DOT here?
we look at the tractor trailers we've got out there now on our local roads, so, I don't know. And
Is
I
there
think
anyone
that,
from DOT here? No?
I mean, it's not one I've heard anybody in any state bring up, so it beats me. I mean, I'll try to find out, but it's not an issue that's been raised.
Well,
So, but maybe we can check it out. If it just goes over to the House, there'll be plenty of time to look into that one, but.
I know the chair of the House Transportation is here.
I know, well, I mean, we do work together.
He wants to send it over to the House,
The amendment.
the amendment.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
If the pilot project is put into place, does that make us more competitive for the grants, do you think? Or, I know that's speculation, but would it make us,
Let's put it this way, that whether it does or not, I mean, I think not being able to spend the money, I speak from experience. Our inability to get the money out for the EV fast charge system has really hurt us. We got a first round of grant from Electrify America. I worked like crazy, wrote letters, tried to talk with them about why we should be eligible for the second grant, funding they were putting out of the states, and it was like, well, we got states that, all the states around us spent their money. So I don't know whether the pilot in and of itself, I think not spending the money puts us in a tough position. I think having the pilot says that if we put in a grant, we would have the experience of the pilot to know in a grant proposal, what's the most effective way for New Hampshire to do this? It'd probably be different, because that's what you learn from a pilot.
Any other comments from the committee? Concerns?
I'd be happy to move the amendment.
Well,
Well, we haven't moved the bill yet.
yeah, we have to move the bill.
But, I mean, I guess, we could have a ritual of trying to do on to pass and then not and do something else, but I don't know, Madam Chair, I'm just yammering away.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I mean, to me,
Make the
there,
motion.
there is very little downside, so I'm going to make a motion of ought to pass.
All right,
I'll second. Usually you make the motion before you talk. But I don't
Yeah,
do that either.
well, no, it's a
Look what we
chatty
did, you know.
group, yeah.
I talked forever before we made a motion.
All right, so the motion is ought to pass on Senate Bill 417.
And so I'll move ought to pass on amendment
Well, we haven't-
0215. You have to do the amendment before
Okay.
you do the bill. I move to pass on the amendment 0215S. With the corrections, with the two, with the one line stricken and then the words added on line 33.
And we have to renumber the Roman numerals after the stricken line, just as a third.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so the motion is ought to pass on the amendment. Was there a second? You made the motion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so, all those in favor of ought to pass on the amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed? Nay?
Nay.
Ruth,
Yes,
where are you?
I'm looking at this thing, and this is a pilot program for 2 buses, right?
Well, he's changing it from 5 buses to whatever the amount would
Support.
support.
And then I've added the language on providing the heat. That's the amendment, and that's what we're voting on.
Do we want to take this vote again? Do you want to hold off on this, Ruth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so do you want to,
I'll withdraw my motion.
okay, and withdraw your,
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
We'll wait.
so. This has to be out next week, so. Okay.
David, are you going to do a new amendment with those changes, or?
I could, I mean, let's talk.
Yeah.
Senator Gritzel, because I mean, I don't want to, I mean, I can make a before speech and who knows, but you know,
Well, let me,
we got the money. They're gonna, DDS are gonna spend it if we, unless, and if we don't tell them how to do it, they'll do it however they please.
you think? All right, why do I have the House bill over here? Well, I've got the, personal delivery devices. Do we want to set something up as a, I don't want to,
Which one?
we could, the personal device carrier, the, I thought it would be kind of fun to have, see if we can arrange a demonstration before
Yeah.
we vote on this, just,
I'd love it.
or do you just want to get?
Does it make a difference?
Well, it's just fun.
I mean, it's fun, but we could see it after.
Okay,
Have the bill delivered to the house.
all right,
I don't know what Jimmy's feeling, but I was ready to go on it.
all right, well, let's do that one last, because I want to get through the Senate bills first. So retention of social security numbers, but it's 449. And I know Senator Waters, you had an amendment. Senator Gray has an amendment that clarifies the language for the Department of Safety.
And I don't know if anybody got this. Did people get it, amendment? 0383?
Yeah,
Well, however you want to proceed.
well, let's,
You said 0383, is that what you said?
Yes.
yes.
I have it.
Ruth, you have it? Okay. So let's, do I hear a motion on Senate Bill 449 ought to pass.
I'll make the motion of ought to pass.
I'll second. So we have two amendments. This is basically Senator Gray's bill that it gives an applicant for the driver's license an opportunity to determine whether his or her complete social security number are the last 5 digits. So the difference, I think, between Senator Waters' bill and Senator Gray's continues to do the 4, shall be given the opportunity, the applicant shall be given the opportunity to determine whether to have his or her complete social security number or only the last 5 digits of their social security number retained in the records of the Department of Safety. And yours offers them to have it completely stricken out.
I mean, I just take a minute to look at Gray's, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So I think, speak for a second. So just reiterating Neil Kirk's concern was that currently people provide the social security number and then can have it completely removed. And I think the concern was that the bill did not allow it to be completely removed, Senator Gray's bill. It sounds like his amendment still doesn't allow
Correct.
to have it completely removed. So I am concerned about that. So Senator Waters' version, to me, makes more sense in terms of privacy protections.
So, I think that Senator Gray's amendment is a great improvement, and I appreciate that. It basically does adopt a fair amount of my amendment. I mean, particularly, about whether or not it goes to the Secretary of State.
So it actually does, it says, I think on line 15 and 16, the application form shall include a box to check off if the applicant does not wish to provide his or her complete social security number,
So,
or only the last 5 digits.
yeah, I mean, I think it does adopt a lot of what I had, although it does not retain the current option that you could have none
Right.
retained. And my feeling is, and why I wrote the amendment the way I did, is that I think that's really important principle. It's something that we have had for how many decades, that we have not wanted people's social security numbers to be, if they didn't wish them to be provided to state agencies. There's all kinds of questions of security, but it's also personal freedom. And I think that's one that, for a lot of things we've done with DMV and other places too, but particularly with DMV.
Senator Waters, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Make sure your mic is on.
Particularly with DMV, the social security number has been something that has been pretty sacrosanct, that we do not have to provide it if we don't want to. Now, in Senator Gray's amendment, saying, well, it's the last 4 digits. I mean, I think that the insecurity there is that, that time in which you've got to provide the whole thing to have the last 4, and in a sense, what is the point of the last 4? Because you really couldn't use that, because, I mean, a lot of people have the same last 4 digits of the social security number, potentially. And also, I mean, to me, no matter what we amendment with, I do not like the idea of the DMV being roped in to the arguments over voting. And I think that, we've been around and around on this in all kinds of ways, but that is why, I really I see that as actually the primary purpose of the bill, is to ensure that DMV is being used to police people's feelings about voting, and I object to it. So, that's why I thought it was important to retain the idea here that you could refuse to have your social security number there. And that way you could keep for yourself your right to vote and your privilege of driving a car separate.
Yes.
No, I'm not really as concerned about the voting issue as I am about taking away the ability of somebody to not have their social security number in a file. I remember, and you may remember this too, in the past, we had a bill that would allow license plate readers going through the tolls to hold on to the license plates, and we killed that idea. You can't hold on to those license plates. And we have been a state where the idea of privacy is sacrosanct, and I've worked very closely with Representative Kirk when he was in the legislature to make sure that DNA was not used inappropriately. And so we've done all sorts of things to be careful about that. And this, in both the bill and Senator Gray's amendment, takes a very important individual identifier and doesn't give us the choice to pull it out of the record. And I just can't support that. I can support the version that Senator Waters has, but I can't support one that does not allow a New Hampshire resident to really keep control over their social security number.
If I may, Madam Chair, too, is that, we have 311 before us, right? Senate Bill 311, which
Yep.
is going to let some licenses. Now, you see how, you see how things ramify in that, okay, now you've got another entity that has a license. And the license at the DMV, somebody wants to do a few keystrokes, they might potentially get at least the last 4. And so what we've done is we've made even more opportunities for one's personal information to be no longer private. And so, just every time, I think the license becomes so important because it raises the possibility of hacking, of identity theft. Every time that we connect these things, it's one more link that folks who want to try to invade our privacy can use.
Well, I think, and I appreciate what you're saying, but I do feel that, as you can see, part of this is the applicant shall be given the if I recall, the reason why we're trying to keep the 5 digits of the social security number is intrastate law enforcement agencies. The department shall only make the social security number available to other states for driver record purposes to any national driver information repository established to federal law upon their request on a case-by-case basis to a law enforcement agency that requires social security number for investigative purposes. So part of this is also to help the law enforcement go intrastate or interstate, whatever it
If I
is.
may, Madam Chair, it's hard for me to see how if the other state doesn't have the social security number, that the last 4 digits can do them any good.
Well, do you, Department of Safety here?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
How are you guys?
Good.
Sorry, I didn't hear the full question.
Well, part of the reason why Senator Gray is saying that he put this in, or that's in the language, is so that keeping the 5-digit, last 5 digits of the social security number, it can be used as an investigative piece going interstate or intrastate.
So the social security number, the last 5 digits, helps further identify a person. So with the state-to-state verification system, Again, it's not necessary, we're already doing it. It just helps make a better match to make sure that we're pulling the correct driver's motor vehicle record over. It's just one more data point. We go through a series of data points when we're matching. And the 5, because you can have the last 4 match another one depending on their preceding numbers. And with the 5th one, it just adds that extra knowing. So if somebody moves in from Massachusetts, we're pulling the driving record over. We're matching on their name, their date of birth, their social security number, and the social security, well, the driver's license and the social security number. So it's just one more data point on the 5th one. Again, the department's already matching and using what we have. We have people that do not have any social security numbers in the system. And so we go to that next tier of matching. It's just one more security item while we're matching.
Will this make it easier for you to do the matching?
Yes, it will decrease the number of records that we need to go back through. So if they can't make an exact match at the counter while they're issuing the process, we don't stop the process. We allow the customers to do what they need to do when they transfer in from out of state. It goes to a back office function, which goes through and makes sure that we are pulling the appropriate records.
If I may ask, but right now, because DMV doesn't have social security numbers, you're doing what you have to do.
Why now?
Yeah.
When Senator Gray came to talk to us about it, we said, he talked about the 4, and we said if you're going to modify it, then the 5 would be beneficial to DMV. Like I said, we're currently doing it now where people do not have any social security numbers in the database. When you move in from out of state, you provide your social security number, you match the best we can. When people are going out of state, they do the best they can on matching.
Do you currently keep, do some people have social security numbers in the system?
At DMV? Yes, so right now, current day, you can opt to leave your social security number on, or you can opt to have the full item removed. If the full item is removed, after we do that initial check, it gets purged from the system. The number that would be in that field gets flipped to all 9s. If you choose not to have it removed, then your full social security number stays in the system.
And how many people request to have it removed completely?
I apologize, I don't know that number.
Okay. Senator Sherman?
So this is, I guess, how accurate is your matching right now without a social security number? Is it pretty good?
I would say we do a good job at matching.
Okay.
Would it be
Thanks.
enhanced with 5?
It would reduce the amount of manual work that goes in the system so we can better apply our efforts elsewhere with issuing motor vehicle records and completing other motor vehicle transactions. So on the other side, for the customer service aspect, there is the problem driver pointer system. And if you don't have your social security number in the database, say there's a Martha Smith in another jurisdiction, PDPS comes up on a like hit of, it could be Mark Smith, Marta Smith, date of birth is very similar. The social security number itself is a unique identifier. When it's broadcasted, we can instantly make that determination. Nope, that is not you. You move on. The customer can alleviate potential restoration fees as a result of becoming suspended. If customers need to be calling around to other jurisdictions to clear their name, that can be costly to them and along with their time.
Senator Ward. Thank you, Madam Chair. So right now in New Hampshire, we have 4 digits. When we talk about 5, does that have anything to do with how many cases you're processing? I'm just thinking if we go to LA or New York, they'll probably have more people getting stopped. Are they doing 4, 5, or do you see the possibility of having to go to 6 in order to do a good job?
AMVA's best practices indicates 5 digits as the best practice. Obviously, in totality, all 9 would be the most 110% way that you identify an individual. Currently, right now, as I said, if we have a person's social security number, we're matching on the whole thing, the last 5, the 4, whatever information we have, but we do have records where there's nothing there and we're still doing our job.
So if I may, we don't have the 4 now.
Correct.
There's
It's
no-
either the whole
Yeah,
thing
it's
or
either
nothing.
the whole thing or 0. And that's
Correct.
the choice that we've always provided to the people of the state of New Hampshire. And I'd say to the committee members, I'm not asking a question, but that, we were reminded by Neil Kirk, we all voted for that privacy amendment to the Constitution. And I think you go back and take a look at it, and you you see the wording that is now in our Constitution. Compelling state need is not gonna be met in a court by saying that we have to do a little less paperwork. It is not gonna fly in court if somebody decides to sue about this. So privacy, I just say, I'm big on privacy. I have always been, and this is, to me, a pretty dramatic erosion of it.
You have a follow-up?
Sorry, please know that we do have RSA 26014, and we do follow that accordingly, as Senator Birdsell was talking about, making the request on letterhead, signed, dated, stating the purpose. And before we go and give data, we are vetting what is going on for what information. And as you know, Social Security number is part of that PII, where that is not just given to anybody or accessible by anybody. And through the information of the state-to-state verification system, we had that legislative authority to move into the program and to share that information with other motor vehicle jurisdictions. It still doesn't go to a public platform for anyone to access. So we do understand the severity of driver privacy, name, date of birth, social security number, and we do take the protection of their information very seriously.
Follow-up question? How about the rest of the states? Do they all have 4 or 5? Do you know?
The states vary on the decisions that they make. Like I know right now the state of California is having a problem with how they're going to implement the state-to-state verification system due to the not retaining of social security numbers and the millions of records that quadruple ours.
Okay, thank you.
Just one more. Has there ever been a case in the history of the DMV where there's been a data breach?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did you have a question?
No, I'm just mulling.
Okay. I think I want to hold on to this one, too. And talk to the rest of the caucus before I move ahead. So this will be for next week, too.
Since there was a motion of ought to pass, is that gonna be rescinded?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
My motion of.
I'm gumming things up, aren't I?
Yes.
I'm making your life
Well,
hard.
no,
Oh, we'll get
I
there.
want to make sure that
I
I have my
know.
caucus behind me
Of course.
before I make any determinations. Which one is this? Oh. All right. Senate Bill 311. Huh?
I mean, really, I'm
We
sorry.
are getting this out. I don't care if we have to be here till 8 o'clock. We're getting this one out.
All right.
So you have 2 amendments. 1004S and 1005S. One is from 005S, I believe, is language from the automotive dealers. And 100, I think. And I think 1004S is from healthcare. That's what I was thinking. When I read it last night, it has both of them in it. Dan, Paula, do you have copies of these? Can we get them copies?
It looks to me, Madam Chair, that 05 is the one we ought to work off of. It looks to me like that 05 includes everything that's in 04. And then it has a little more.
automobile dealers?
That's the man.
Can
Yeah.
we have them?
Sure, Danny, can you come on up?
Question, Dan, sorry.
You've seen the amendments, or the amendment?
I have not. We
Okay.
offered some suggested language on one of them, but
Can
I'm
I-
not sure which one.
Can I
you want.
read, there's only one line that worries me. I think it comes out of a discussion we had. It says there is no consequence to the holder who declines to provide such consent. And that's consent to have you take an image of their driver's license. Didn't you mention to me that there's a problem there for subsequent loan? Is that something, was that something we talked about? Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember the discussion. We had actually asked that that section be stripped because of the problem of, the example that we proposed to you was, I say, would you like to test drive this vehicle? And you say yes, and I say, well, then can I have a copy of your license? And I say no, and then you say, well, I still get to test drive the vehicle.
Right.
So no consequence to the, so our proposal is actually that that section be removed from the language entirely.
And I thought there was also something where you have to have some kind of identification for a subsequent loan as a part of the sale.
In some instances, that information is then passed on because the dealer is really acting as an agent of, say, the finance source.
Right.
And our suggestion was that in the section that eliminated the sharing of the information with a third party, we suggested language that said, I believe something along the lines of, you cannot share that information unless it is related to the finalization of that business transaction.
Yeah, so we have that in '04. That's the very last line of the
Yeah.
amendment. And we could add that to the
To
very
5.
last line of 5 there.
Yeah.
But I guess then what do we think about the consequences thing?
Well,
Could you turn that around and say the dealer is under no obligation to participate if the person doesn't consent? In other words, well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would just, so on 1005, I would take, on number 5, the holder may request the removal of the driver's license or non-driver's license ID card image from the healthcare provider system at any time. However, refusal by the However, refusal by the healthcare provider or automotive dealer to remove the image is acceptable should an active investigation or legal action concerning the holder be underway. That doesn't make sense, does it?
It does make sense, because if there's actual, if you're in the middle of some kind of action, like even an arrest or something like
Right.
that, you don't want the person being able to pull their image at that point. But I think if you're going to say refusal is acceptable, you have to have, when can it then no longer be acceptable? So it's after the investigation or legal action is complete.
What
I
if,
think.
what if we changed line 15 to say any potential consequence to the holder who declines to provide such consent shall be, it shall be presented in writing. So that would say that if you decline, then we'll say, well, here it says you can't take the car on a test drive. Or if you decline, here it says, well, we won't be able to check for your insurance record.
But can I speak? Sorry. There's kind of a difference in the two industries.
Yeah.
So the healthcare industry can't say, we're not going to treat you.
Right.
And they're doing it for verification of insurance. On the other hand, giving somebody your Ferrari for a test drive without having a drive, I think you should be able to say, I'm sorry, without that ID, you can't do a test drive. You could still buy the car, but you can't take the car off the lot. You can't. So I think there has to be.
What if we just said the automotive dealer
Am I right there?
We had actually asked in our proposed language to change the term from automobile dealer to motor vehicle-related business.
What is that again?
Motor
Oh,
vehicle-related
that-
business.
yeah, that's in the 1004S. So
And-
this is the auto dealers.
Yeah. okay.
Just as an example, last week was school break week, right? So I took my kids snowmobiling in Pittsburgh, and in order to rent a $16,000 snowmobile with a heated seat on the back for my wife, albeit, I had to provide through a kiosk scanning machine, I had to provide a copy of my license that was duplicate scanned, just in order for me to be able to take that unit and move on to the trail system. So that's one of the reasons for our suggestion, motor vehicle-related business.
Well,
Will that capture snowmobiles?
I believe so.
First paragraph is going to be about a pilot program, and then for automotive,
I think on this.
motor
yeah.
vehicle, and then healthcare, and then you split the two with the healthcare constraints and then the motor vehicle constraints.
So guess what?
What?
Not ready for prime.
But let's
We're
keep
getting
on-
this
we're gonna
done
work on it.
today.
So, I mean, that would work, I think, because you're basically repeating it twice, but just referencing one or referencing the other.
Right.
But I do think that would mean on the, that, that two here on line 15 would stay in the part that is the healthcare.
On which one? 5?
Yeah, on the line 15 and 16, if we're going to split them in two, then line 15 and 16 would stay in the one for the healthcare.
Right.
I would think that for the motor vehicle-related business, that what we would say is the motor vehicle-related business shall inform the customer of any consequence to the holder who declines to provide such consent. So that would be, you could say, if you don't give us, you don't let us do the license, you don't get to drive the car.
So what I would suggest is we take 1004, finesse that to just the automotive dealers, and that be their portion,
Okay?
and 1005 would be the healthcare portion.
Fine, but on that, Dan, do we just want to have no consequence language whatsoever, as you suggested, or do we want to have some informing of the customer of a potential consequence? Do you want that in statute or not?
Our suggestion was just to remove it entirely.
Fine with that then.
Remove it completely?
Yeah.
I mean.
In their part, as it is here on 04,
Oh,
yeah,
that there, no consequence,
Yeah.
got it,
which is not here.
In some cases, the fewer the language, the better.
yeah. Okay. So,
So what it would mean then on 5 is that we would just, on line 11, would strike out "and automobilers,"
yeah,
and then on line 18, we'd strike out "or automo dealer." And then on line 23, we'd strike out "or automobile dealers." And then line 24, we'd strike out "or automobile dealer." And then line 27, we'd strike out "or automobile dealer." And the healthcare folks don't need that unnecessary to finalize the business transaction thing, so we don't need to add it in this version.
so we can use, D is the same for both, so we can use that. Is it not? Nothing in this paragraph shall prohibit the scanning, photocopying, recording, retaining, or storing of the image obtained and any driver's license or non-driver's ID card collected with the driver's license or non-driver's identification card holder's consent for health care and auto dealer's business. That would be the introductory.
Motor vehicle related.
Right. And that would be the introductory paragraph.
Right, and then you'd have subparagraphs.
Right.
So I think that what you do is after D, I think you'd have a,
You have a 1 would be
I don't know how this would,
motor vehicle related, and 2 would be
Well, we'd have to also have an introductory, stating that this is a pilot program to last for 2 years.
Madam Chair, I think for, it's hard for me to see how you can have it partly woven together and then break it out in terms of how they structure a bill here,
You just want to
the
do it
statute. So
all separately?
I'm really wondering whether, say there's a pilot program established, and then, say D runs down here on this side, and then we have E, and it runs down the automobile or dealers.
You would be the healthcare?
D is healthcare, and then this one is motor vehicle. So I can go through on 04, we've got to strike healthcare. So we've got to, what we have to do on line 11 in Amendment 04 is strike or,
Or healthcare?
and, for healthcare and is stricken. And then on line 15, healthcare provider or is stricken.
Yep.
And then on line 22, healthcare provider or, so it would be the motor vehicle
Right.
related business.
Which one's going first, David? Motor vehicles or healthcare?
Care, I don't know. So,
We'll
let's,
do it in
let's,
alphabetical order, automotive dealers.
okay, so that means that this is a D.
Motor
okay.
vehicles.
On 04
So they go second.
is D, 04 is
That's
D.
right.
On line 8, 04 is D. And then on 1005, on line 8, that becomes an E. All right? And that probably means that the drafting attorney will have to re-numerate the other things after D to, after D and E to make them the new EF.
And
the
I'll
old EF or
walk this
whatever.
through.
So what do you want to have for the pilot program language? Because that's,
Let's see what
the
they
bill.
come up, what,
Well, if we're going to vote on a committee amendment is what I'm saying.
hereby establishes a pilot program.
Why do you think we need to do a pilot? Why do we need to do a pilot?
Well, in case there are any issues that come up.
Well, we'll hear about them and then we could fix them, but.
My only concern is a 2-year pilot is probably going to not last long enough. I mean, we've already heard testimony that a lot of places are already doing this, and
The time it would take them to set up all their computers
Yeah.
and everything else. I mean, I think this, pilot means you've got to revisit it and pass the legislation again.
Well, the only reason
But-
I thought about doing a pilot program is because, let's see how it works, and then we can open it up to other businesses, because, once this starts, other businesses are gonna, why weren't we part of
Well,
this?
we could deal with that, in a couple of years. I don't know, I think if you say 2 years for these folks, by the time they get a computer set up, they're gonna wonder whether, legislation would have to go in not next not this coming not next January, but the January after that, so they have no time to really, to do it. So,
What do you guys think? just make it a permanent solution?
I actually think that's a better idea.
Okay, I'm fine with it.
I just had a note here that I have written down that we were expecting information from Bruce Berkey. You
I
remember
think that's the amendment stuff.
Bruce
that?
Berkey.
Some Equifax, Aquifer Reporting Act information from Bruce.
Senator Ward, could you turn your mic on, please? Thank you.
I have in my notes that we were expecting some information from Bruce Berkey.
I don't remember that at all.
Does that get back to the loan application question? Do you all typically check with a credit Bureau.
Equifax, he was gonna check with Credit Comp.
Is that a credit company?
for a loan you would?
Equifax.
For loan purposes, a credit check would certainly be something that would be conducted. I don't know which of Mr. Berkey's clients he spoke to you on behalf of.
He just mentioned Equifax.
Okay.
So that would make sense that it's part of the loan process that they would need this kind of identifier? I don't know if Equifax.
Well, if we got finalized the
With their
business,
credit history,
Right.
if we got finalized the business
Business
transaction
transaction,
in
that
here, I
includes
think,
the
I
loan
think that
piece.
would take care of that, any issue that Bruce might
Okay.
have for the credit, I would think, 'cause-
but we have not spoken to him on this particular issue, just.
So, I could I'll move, Senate Bill 311 ought to pass. And I will move a committee amendment, that places the language that we have developed concerning health, motor care as D, and then the language we have developed for healthcare as E.
Yep.
And do you think, Peter, you've got everything we've yacked about? Let's go through it. In D,
Please.
yeah, in D, then, on line 11, we delete for healthcare and. In line 15, we delete healthcare provider or.
And
In line 22, we delete healthcare provider or. Whoa, thank you. So line
Line
20,
20.
healthcare provider or we delete.
from the,
Yeah. So you got that so far, Peter?
Yep, so all of the references to healthcare from D, starting in line 11, going down, are all
Yep.
stricken from the bill.
on 1004.
Correct.
Yeah, then moving on to 1005, D there becomes
Becomes
E
E.
on line 8.
And then on line 11, and automobile dealers' business purposes.
No, no,
provide-
just and automobile dealers is.
Gets
really-
lined out.
Okay.
Just, and, so on line 11, and automobile dealers is
18,
removed. And then,
18,
line 18,
Or
or
auto-
automobile dealer. Line 23,
23.
or automobile dealers. And line 24,
24.
or automobile dealer. And
And-
line 27.
yep.
Okay, thank you.
And
That does it.
when should this be effective? Yep. Please don't complicate it anymore.
I'm not, it's just, when we say amend, I think the XD has to be D, and then you have to say D and E, right?
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
Right, amend, though, up on top, when you're changing the
Oh.
Well,
amendment.
they'll do that.
They'll
They
do
the
that?
committee
Okay.
amendment, Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
You want to do 60 days after passage or immediate?
Well, I mean, they're gonna get, why not let them
Immediate.
get started? I mean, it's like, this is enabling
Yeah.
entirely, so.
Can I just ask one tiny wordsmith question? Line 11 in 1005S, everywhere else we're talking about healthcare provider, and in this one we said healthcare business purposes. Should we say healthcare provider business purposes, or does it matter?
I'm not sure it matters, but
If you want it in there, we can put it in there. Paula, does that matter?
You see how everywhere else it's healthcare providers except in that one reference?
I hear what you're saying, except I think it was the underlying statute. I have to look at the bill, which I left at
Sorry,
the office, but
I'm not wedded.
I think it was because of the business purposes, because of the underlying statute. I think it's okay, as is.
Okay. And, Peter, make it effective upon passage. Okay, so this was, ought to pass as amended.
well, we haven't voted on the amendment yet. That's been moved. Yeah, the committee amendment has been moved and seconded.
All those in favor of the committee amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Do we want to bring it to the floor, or do we want to?
We haven't passed the bill yet. I want to get out of here, too. As amended.
And I'll second. All those in favor of ought to pass as amended, say
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Consent.
Nobody wants to talk. Second. All those on consent, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
When you threaten, no, I'm not
I
opposed.
apologize, Senators. That was a flurry of motions. Who moved consent and who seconded?
I
Just
move
wanna-
consent.
She
Second.
seconded.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll take it out.
When you threatened to keep us here to 8 o'clock, we were going to get it done. Effective technique. It comes
you.
from dog training, right?
Yes, actually. Why don't we go, why don't you finish what you're doing? And we will do a House bill. We'll do House Bill 116 relative to personal delivery devices. Okay, I'll second. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor of ought to pass on House Bill 116, say aye.
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 Opposed? Consent? Okay,
Second.
all right. And all those in favor of consent, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Senator Richard, you want to take this one out?
Sure.
Do you want to talk about
Yes.
571 a little, or?
We're going to talk about 571, but we're not doing anything with it today.
I saw, you came anyways, Captain, so.
We might as well make
He
your
said, well,
time.
I said, if we don't talk about it, you don't have to come down, right? But I guess he wanted to get out of the office. So, Madam Chair, I'll just, because I have an amendment coming. It is just like the one that you got, but Captain Eastman thought we needed to clarify that OHRVs were included in the enforcement there. And so what the bill does is, if we pass the repeal, and what the amendment does, if we pass the repeal, it affirms that municipalities have the authority to enforce state statutes on noise and speed. It does not allow municipalities to create new regulations. It just says that if the state statute specifies, which it does already in statute, the speed limits and decibel levels, if a municipality wants to enforce those, and I think they already had the authority, but this makes it clear, yes, indeed, they can do that on the part of a public body of water which is within their municipal bounds. does say that they can do it with the state authorities, so they can decide whether they want to go out there by themselves or go out there with a fish and game or whatever they want to do. But I think that, if we pass the repeal, that is a reasonable clarification, which will make nobody happy, but it's still reasonable.
What does everyone think about that? Ruth, I know you had concerns.
Well, isn't there something about any body of water that's more than 10 acres is public access, and they don't have to have special permission? So you can cross-country ski, and I would imagine you can take in OHRV on it. And I think in this issue, I think we have, the noise issue is a big one. And I don't know if we can set limits, decibel limits, which I think is very reasonable to do, and there you can easily measure it. And maybe the times of the day that they can actually
But
go out with noise.
aren't the decibel levels already set into the RSA?
And I believe time of day is also in statute. No, it's not, right. But the decibel level and the speed limits are already in statute.
It is, okay. I didn't-
And it just says that the municipality, for some reason Concord said we can't enforce if it's on the state body of water. And,
Right.
they can. I think they can, but now if we pass the amendment, it's clear they can, if they want. But, I mean, for me, it's, I really get what's happening in Concord. I understand the neighbors, I understand, if they don't like it. It reminds me a lot of what we went through with Woodland Pond and Dover and Summersworth, where there was duck hunting. And, people wanted us to just say it was illegal. Well, it's a public body of water. But we finally came around and said, well, by the way, the actual lines of enforcement here and how far you have to be from shore to shoot and so on, that in fact can be enforced by the local municipalities. And if they enforce that, they could do that, and lo and behold, the duck hunters decided that this wasn't such a great place to hunt anymore. But I mean, the public waters issue goes back, I mean, that's deep in English common law.
Right.
That's about as deep a principle here, and for our state, it's the people of the state own public waters, and.
Senator Waters, I apologize again.
Oh, yeah.
Could you?
The
Thank
people-
you.
The people of the state own the public waters, and this is the one exception that was made to that, and it makes me anxious. I mean, I don't know how, I'm still, saying, I really get what the, folks in Concord, if I lived there, I probably wouldn't like it either, and, but here we are.
Senator Rishardi?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Since we're having a discussion, I would like to put my opinion in. After I listened to everyone, there was a reoccurring theme among the people who would like the ban to stay in place beyond the noise, and that was that they kept saying everyone should be able to use it. But when the bikers are on there, I can't ice skate safely. But I looked, and it's certainly large enough to accommodate everybody. So it seems to me that they themselves, who would like the ban to stay, have said it should be for everyone. I feel like there's a way to make it work for everyone, and I always like to use personal examples. So when we bought our home 26 years ago, it abuts town property. And we didn't realize it would be a problem because we bought a beautiful private wooded lot that was a buffer of any noise and so forth. And I've mentioned before that the town salt shed contaminated our well, and in order to access everyone and fix the problem, they cleared our lot, and you cannot replace hundreds of year-old trees. So every time we have snow, we get woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning because I can hear the plows getting the sand and getting everything else. Do I go and complain about it? Well, no, because I bought property that abuts town property, and they have to put the sand on the roads, and they have to plow for the rest of the community. I don't like it, I don't want to move, but it is what it is. And so I appreciate that they don't like the noise, I feel their pain, but I do think it belongs to everyone, and that all things being equal, everyone should have a right to use it and be considerate of each other and make it work.
Thank you, Senator Rishardi. I like your Ukrainian colors today.
Yeah, trying, and my sunflowers.
Senator.
I have really mixed feelings on this. First of all, it's, what is the proper name of the type of management area it is?
It's wildlife.
No, the actual, it's a wildlife management. Wildlife management area, you know, it's a public body. We heard lots about people coming in and using it with their OHRVs, but I can't believe that we think that it's consistent with a wildlife management area to allow spike tire motorcycles to be going around in circles. On the other hand, I hear what Senator Waters is saying, and I think we are compelled by the law and the common law, and that it needs to be publicly available. And I think a slightly different compromise might be thought about, and that's where we do some of what Senator Ward said, which is restrict the hours. So as the sun's going down, you don't have headlights lighting up the ice and people still racing up until 6, 7 o'clock at night or later. Another option would be to restrict the number of days on this one, since we know there are other options. But as I said, this is a real struggle for me, and I think the easy answer is this is a public body. It's greater than 10 acres, and as Senator Ricciardi said, people knew before they moved there that this was the use, and so we have no right to change that. So I'm still struggling with it. I don't have a good answer, but I do think if it's a wildlife management area, I think we're managing the wildlife by allowing them to be scared off. So that's what this does. So in any case, those are my comments. I don't have an answer for it. I appreciate what Senator Waters is doing. In fact, we did do that on the Seacoast. We did make sure that local law enforcement could enforce state laws on state bodies of water, and it's been hugely effective in making sure that Coastal Patrol actually has all the support they need. So I think that's a great step in the right direction.
Well, let's just keep a little perspective here because, for instance, this year alone, granted it wasn't used this year, but there were only 2 days in this whole winter that they would have been able to use it. The most in the 40 years that it's been used, the most days that it would be usable would be 10 days out of the winter. So we're not talking every weekend all day long. We're just talking probably 1 or 2 days a month at the most. My other concern is if we allow this, let's just say this bill to go through, how many, and Senator Waters and I, this is your first year on, no. Transportation. How many more terms will we see other areas that don't like the HORVs or these motorcycles coming in wanting their bodies of water restricted as well? And that's something that we need to really be cognizant of.
If I could reply, I actually loved the testimony about how much of a family event some of these events are, and I think that's great. And if it goes as swimmingly as the stories we were hearing, I'm surprised there are any complaints. But being able to actually enforce state laws on decibel levels, and I would love to see something that actually put some constraint on the actual times that it could be used. But that's the only additional one that I'd like to see.
We have half an easement here, and I just was trying to imagine, if you do it for one public body of water, why not do it for every public body of water, or people want you to do it for every public body of water? I just simply cannot imagine the process where we try to not only pass a law, but enforce a law that sets hours of use. I mean, is this going to say somebody in Winnipesaukee, late at night, you're supposed to travel certain speeds and so on, but can you imagine one that says that from 10 o'clock at night until 7 in the morning, you can't be on a boat about a body of water. Oh, I hope I'm not in the legislature when that one comes up, but, oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, let me just say as an aside, in 10 years, all these bikes are gonna be electric. They'll be nice and quiet. And how many years after that, they won't freeze up in the winter at all?
Yeah.
So-
And the-
so somebody else's problem. It'll be-
Right. And the other benefit with all those electric bikes is the torque's much better, so they,
It is, they're great bikes.
they're
ride
great
'em.
bikes.
All right.
Hot
So
stuff.
I think we know where we're going with this, but,
And if I may just ask too, as I mentioned to you, Madam Chair, this will be a rhetorical question. Isn't it likely that if we don't pass this bill, we may see it again as an amendment to something else? Is that a rhetorical question?
good point. All right, with that, do I hear a motion to go out of exec? Or is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about? No? Yeah, you want to get out of here.
You don't want to hear what I want to talk about.
Electric school buses. Do I hear a motion to get out of exec?
So moved.
Okay. Senator Sherman moves out of exec, Senator Ward seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? See you all next week.
We made some progress.
Same time,
Incremental
same
progress.
place.
We didn't get our first gear, but